A woman was shot and killed just minutes after posting about the domestic violence she was facing. Family members say 34-year-old Mariah Samuels lost her life this weekend to that violence. John Lauritsen spoke with Samuels' loved ones.
Nothing bad I could ever say about her. I don't think nobody has bad things to say about her.
One day after she was shot and killed, those closest to Mariah Samuels created a memorial in her honor. She was a mother of 2 boys and a dog groomer who enjoyed spending time with family and friends.
She loves animals. She loved her son. She was sweet. She was outgoing. She was free-spirited. We loved each other. She's my everything.
Just before 8 o'clock Sunday morning, Minneapolis police found her shot here in North Minneapolis, just feet from her own front door. Samuel's family members believe her ex-boyfriend is responsible for her death. They say she had a restraining order out against him.
We both making police reports, calling the police for the last 2 weeks.
This is a story of Mariah Samuels. On September 14th, 2025, in the Willard Hay neighborhood of North Minneapolis, a 34-year-old woman, Mariah Samuels, was gunned down outside her home. The attack was carried out in public view, with 10 rounds fired into her body. Within minutes, she was pronounced dead at the scene. The incident was not random. Samuels had recently ended a relationship with a man named David Eugene Wright, and in the weeks before her death, she had taken steps to protect herself from his escalating threats. She filed police reports, described incidents of physical assault, and obtained protection order less than 3 weeks prior to the shooting. Despite these measures, her warnings and documented complaints failed to prevent what would unfold. Earlier in August, Samuels had reported being pistol whipped, stalked, and repeatedly threatened. Court records and social media posts show she attempted to alert both authorities and the public about the danger she faced. On the day she was killed, she had posted online about ongoing harassment. Minutes later, she was targeted outside her home. Wright was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and illegal gun possession. The case against him would highlight a pattern: prior reports of domestic violence, a protection order that was ignored, and a system that had multiple warnings yet did not stop the outcome. Before we dive into today's story, we want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? And how do you feel as the story unfolds? Welcome to Deadly Crime Unmasked, the show where we expose the shocking crimes that rip through communities and the chilling secrets lurking behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Don't forget to subscribe and activate notifications. You won't want to miss the gripping story that's coming up. Now, let's dive in. Mariah Samuels was a 34-year-old woman living in North Minneapolis, specifically in the Willard Hay neighborhood. She worked as a professional pet groomer, a career she had built steadily and was recognized for by her clients. Her work placed her in contact with many people in the community, giving her a reliable network of clients who depended on her services. Samuels was also the mother of 2 children. Her role as a parent shaped much of her daily life. She was described by those around her as a responsible individual who maintained consistency both at work and at home. Her independence was a defining quality, balancing employment and childcare responsibilities without depending on others for support. In the Willard Hay neighborhood, Samuels was recognized by neighbors and community members. Her presence was noted not only in her residence, but also through her professional activity and family involvement. She maintained ties with local businesses, clients, and acquaintances. She was considered a familiar figure within her environment, and her role extended beyond her household into the community network where she lived and worked. Samuels had previously been in a relationship with a man named David Eugene Wright. The exact length of their relationship was not publicly disclosed in detail, but reports confirmed that their relationship had deteriorated over time and ultimately ended. The nature of their relationship, according to later reports and legal filings, was marked by control and alleged abuse. Patterns of escalating behavior were identified, including accusations of Wright exercising physical and emotional control over Samuels. As the relationship came to an end, reports of conflict became more visible. Samuels eventually separated from Wright, and the relationship shifted from private conflict to legal involvement due to allegations of violence and intimidation. Wright's personal background included prior criminal history. Records showed that he had previous encounters with law enforcement. His name was already linked to violent behavior and arrests before his relationship with Samuels ended. This history became a relevant factor in later proceedings, establishing a pattern that authorities were aware before the events of September 2025 unfolded. The escalation of abuse was documented in August 2025, only weeks before Samuels' death. During this time, she reported multiple incidents of threats and physical violence involving Wright. Among the most serious allegations was an incident where Wright was said to have pistol-whipped Samuels. This act was specifically mentioned in her communications with law enforcement. In addition to physical assaults, Samuels reported repeated threats made against her. Stalking behavior was also part of the escalation. Wright was accused of following Samuels, appearing uninvited near her home, and making it clear through words and actions that he did not intend to respect boundaries. Samuels reached out to law enforcement multiple times during this period. Each report documented her concerns and outlined the nature of the threats. Despite these repeated efforts, she continued to experience intimidation from Wright. In addition to contacting police, Samuels used her personal social media accounts to document and warn about the threats she faced. Her posts detailed her harassment and conveyed that she felt endangered. These public warnings were made shortly before her death, showing that she actively attempted to make her situation visible beyond the private communications she had with authorities. Recognizing the danger she was in, Samuels pursued legal protection against Wright. In late August 2025, she filed for a protection order. This legal action was part of her attempt to stop further harassment and violence. The protection order was granted less than 3 weeks before her death. The court imposed conditions requiring Wright to avoid any form of contact with Samuels. This included both direct and indirect communication. It also contained stay-away provisions, legally restricting him from coming near her residence or workplace. Despite the order being in place, Wright did not comply. Reports indicate that he either denied the allegations outright or chose to defy the restrictions through continued threats and intimidation. His behavior demonstrated disregard for the court's order. Law enforcement followed standard procedures after the protection order was issued, including entering the order into their system and notifying Wright. However, the follow-up enforcement appeared limited. Samuels continued to experience contact and threats even after the order was active. No immediate arrest was made for violations, and the order did not prevent Wright from approaching her in the days leading up to her death. Mariah Samuels' attempts to secure protection in the weeks leading up to her death demonstrate a timeline of repeated warnings to authorities and a clear record of escalating danger. Police reports were filed during August 2025 and early September 2025, in which Samuels described specific threats and incidents of violence by her former boyfriend, David Eugene Wright. One incident involved allegations of physical assault and threats with a firearm. Reports indicated that Wright had pistol-whipped her during a confrontation in August. In her statements to authorities, Samuels detailed ongoing harassment, including stalking behavior that left her fearful for her safety. Despite these reports, enforcement measures against Wright were limited. A protection order had been granted against him in late August 2025. The order legally barred him from contacting or approaching Samuels. However, evidence suggests that Wright continued to harass and intimidate her despite the order being active. Police records indicate repeated complaints were made by Samuels about violations of the order. Yet, there is no record of immediate arrest or detention following those complaints. The lack of strong enforcement action created a gap in protection. Although the order existed on paper, its practical enforcement was weak. Wright's alleged violations were not met with rapid intervention, and the cycle of threats continued. In examining the timeline, several key factors emerge. Late August 2025, protection order issued. Following days, Samuels reports incidents of Wright contacting or approaching her in defiance of the order. Early September 2025, Samuels files additional complaints regarding stalking, intimidation, and threats. September 7 to 10, 2025. Reports indicate that she reached out multiple times to authorities about repeated violations, but Wright was not immediately detained. September 12, 2025. Samuels makes further attempts to highlight the urgency of the situation, warning that the threats had escalated. The investigations into her complaints appear to be delayed or incomplete. Police response records show that calls were made and reports filed, but follow-through such as arrest or preventive custody did not occur in a timely fashion. Witness accounts confirm that Samuels believed her reports were not being fully acted upon. By the time of her death on September 14th, the perception was clear. She had engaged with the system repeatedly, yet the protection offered was insufficient. Her case became an example of how protective measures can fail if not enforced promptly and effectively. In the first days of September 2025, Samuels continued to experience harassment from Wright. Reports described stalking activity, with Wright allegedly being seen near her home despite the protection order. Neighbors observed suspicious behavior in the area, which matched her own concerns. She continued to file reports, and these were documented by police. However, Wright's presence near her home indicated that enforcement gaps remained. Surveillance footage from nearby locations, where available, captured patterns consistent with stalking behavior in the week prior to the homicide. On September 14, 2025, hours before her death, Samuels posted publicly on social media. Her post referenced the threats she faced, the stalking she had endured, and her concerns that official systems had failed to provide effective help. These posts serve as real-time documentation of her state of concern and her acknowledgement that danger remained present. Her posts provide a record of both her awareness of escalating threats and her frustration that her repeated warnings were not met with decisive action. These statements stand as evidence that she made her situation known to both the public and authorities on the very day she was killed. Although precise minute-by-minute details remain under investigation, reconstructed events suggest the following sequence. Morning to afternoon, September 14th. Wright's movements were unremarkable, but records suggest he remained in the Minneapolis area. Late afternoon, Wright was allegedly in the vicinity of Samuels' residence. Neighbors later reported seeing a man consistent with his description walking near her home. Evening, Wright was confirmed to have approached her home area. This placed him in violation of the protection order and placed him in proximity to Samuels at the time of the shooting. On the evening of September 14th, Samuels was outside her home in the Willard Hay neighborhood. The exact reason for her being outside has not been officially confirmed, but was consistent with routine evening activity. It was at this point that Wright confronted her. Her presence outside created the opportunity for direct contact, and Wright used this circumstance to carry out the shooting. The homicide occurred on September 14th, 2025, in the Willard Hay neighborhood of North Minneapolis, directly outside Samuels' residence. The attack took place in the evening hours. Police dispatch records confirm that 911 calls were received shortly after the gunfire was reported. Wright carried a firearm and used it to shoot Samuels. Ballistic analysis later confirmed the weapon type matched casings recovered from the scene. Reports indicate that approximately 10 rounds were fired during the attack. The high number of shots demonstrated the deliberate nature of the act. Neighbors and bystanders reported hearing multiple gunshots in rapid succession. Several individuals reported seeing a man fleeing the scene immediately afterward. Descriptions matched Wright's physical appearance. Witnesses described the chaos immediately following the shooting, including neighbors attempting to provide aid until emergency services arrived. Immediately after the shooting, multiple 911 calls placed by neighbors. Within minutes, Minneapolis Police Department units dispatched to the scene. Emergency medical personnel arrived shortly after police. Samuels was found with multiple gunshot wounds and unresponsive. Paramedics attempted life-saving interventions at the scene. Despite medical efforts, Samuels was pronounced dead at the scene due to the severity of her injuries. The official cause of death was multiple gunshot wounds, as later confirmed by the medical examiner's autopsy report. The suspect in this case is identified as David Eugene Wright. He was a former boyfriend of the victim, Mariah Samuels, and became the prime suspect after the events that unfolded on September 14, 2025. His name appeared consistently in police records, protection orders, and witness statements connected to Samuels' repeated reports of domestic violence. At the time of his arrest in September 2025, Wright was in his mid-30s. His age placed him in a demographic where violent intimate partner crimes are statistically significant, according to law enforcement data. Wright's criminal history revealed several prior interactions with the legal system. Records showed a background involving violent behavior and firearm possession. Some of these incidents involved domestic violence complaints, while others related to general criminal conduct. His criminal record positioned him as a repeat offender and created a pattern that investigators later used in the legal proceedings. Wright's relationship with Samuels was central to the case. He had been in a personal relationship with her before their separation. Following the end of their relationship, Samuels reported escalating threats and acts of violence. Witness statements confirmed that Wright continued to approach and threaten Samuels despite their separation and despite legal actions taken against him. Police records and victim testimony established a timeline of repeated abuse. In August 2025, Samuels reported that Wright had physically assaulted her, threatened her life, and even pistol whipped her. These allegations were supported by her formal complaints to the police. A protection order was granted less than 3 weeks before her death, based on the documented abuse. The order included restrictions prohibiting Wright from contacting or approaching Samuels, but evidence showed he violated these conditions. The evidence collected linked Wright directly to the shooting of Samuels. Key elements included: investigators recovered shell casings and bullets from the crime scene. These were matched to a firearm associated with Wright. Neighbors reported seeing Wright near the scene before and during the time of the shooting. Witnesses heard gunshots and identified Wright as the individual fleeing the area. Samuel's social media posts shortly before her death documented threats she had received from Wright. These posts, combined with earlier reports to law enforcement, established motive and intent. Following the homicide on September 14, 2025, a warrant was issued for Wright's arrest. Police located him within days of the incident. The arrest occurred without significant resistance. Authorities executed the warrant, detained Wright, and booked him on charges, including second-degree murder and illegal firearm possession. The arrest was logged officially, with both the date and time documented in court records. Prosecutors filed 2 primary charges against Wright. This charge was based on evidence that Wright intentionally caused the death of Samuels, with premeditation inferred from threats, the protective order, and prior incidents. Wright's criminal record prohibited him from legally owning or carrying firearms. Ballistic evidence connected him to the weapon used in the shooting, supporting this charge. In Wright's initial court appearance, the charges were formally read aloud. The judge confirmed that Wright understood the charges. Wright entered a plea, and court records show he denied responsibility. The prosecution opposed bail, citing the severity of the crime, the prior protection order, and Wright's criminal background. The court ordered that he remain in custody pending trial. The prosecution built its case around several key arguments. Prosecutors presented a pattern of behavior beginning with threats and assaults, escalating to lethal violence. This pattern was documented through police reports, victim testimony, and witness accounts. The fact that a protection order was granted less than 3 weeks before the killing was central to the case. Prosecutors emphasized that Wright violated the order, showing disregard for legal restrictions and demonstrating intent. Technical evidence from firearms experts linked the bullets and shell casings to Wright's weapon. Witnesses placed him at the scene. Combined, these elements created a direct connection between Wright and the homicide. The defense attempted to challenge the prosecution's narrative in several ways. The defense argued that violations of the order did not directly prove intent to commit homicide. They attempted to cast doubt on whether the protection order was properly enforced or whether Wright fully understood its limitations. Wright denied involvement in the crime and suggested alternative explanations for the evidence. The defense questioned the reliability of witness identification and challenged the chain of custody of the ballistic evidence. The case moved through several pretrial hearings. Motions were filed regarding admissibility of evidence, including social media posts, prior police complaints, and witness statements. The defense sought to exclude evidence of Wright's past behavior, claiming it was prejudicial, while prosecutors argued it was necessary to establish a clear pattern. Judges issued rulings allowing much of the evidence to remain admissible. The court established a timeline for the trial. Jury selection was set, followed by opening statements, witness testimony, presentation of forensic evidence, and cross-examinations. The trial schedule aimed to allow both sides to present their cases thoroughly, with particular attention to ensuring ballistic experts and domestic violence specialists could testify. If convicted of second-degree murder, Wright faced a sentence consistent with Minnesota state law, potentially several decades in prison. The illegal gun possession charge carried additional penalties, which would extend his sentence. Prosecutors indicated they would seek the maximum penalty allowable, citing the pre-existing protection order, the repeated threats, and the escalation leading to Samuels' death. Ballistics experts analyzed a firearm recovered in connection with the suspect, David Eugene Wright. Forensic testing confirmed that the weapon matched the bullets recovered from the victim's body and shell casings found at the scene. Microscopic examination of the rifling patterns on the bullets indicated they were discharged from that specific firearm. The ballistic signature provided conclusive evidence linking Wright to the act. In addition, testing revealed that the weapon was unlawfully possessed, as Wright had prior legal restrictions prohibiting firearm ownership. Investigators documented approximately 10 discharged shell casings around the immediate vicinity of the victim's residence. Each casing was collected, tagged, and later matched to the suspect's firearm. The positioning of the casings, along with bullet trajectory analysis, indicated the shooter fired from a close to mid-range distance, aiming directly at the victim. Trajectory mapping revealed that multiple rounds struck surrounding structures, including a vehicle and exterior walls, supporting accounts of rapid and repeated firing. This evidence further reinforced the deliberate and targeted nature of the shooting. The autopsy performed by the medical examiner concluded that Mariah Samuels died of multiple gunshot wounds. The report detailed the entry and exit wounds, the caliber of the bullets, and the estimated number of shots that struck her body. Several shots caused fatal internal injuries, including damage to vital organs. The report also included toxicology results, which were unremarkable, confirming she was not under the influence of substances at the time of death. The findings aligned directly with the ballistic evidence, further solidifying the timeline and cause of death. Records obtained from the Minneapolis Police Department outlined a consistent history of domestic violence, complaints filed by Samuels against Wright in the weeks leading up to the homicide. Reports included allegations of physical assaults, threats of death, and stalking behavior. One incident described Wright allegedly pistol whipping her, which was documented in both police notes and photographs of her injuries. Court records showed that she had obtained protection order less than 3 weeks prior to the homicide. The order specified that Wright was prohibited from contacting her or approaching her residence. These official complaints demonstrated a clear escalation of abuse that had been formally reported. Digital investigators reviewed Samuel's social media activity, which included posts made shortly before her death. In these posts, she described ongoing threats, harassment, and her lack of safety. Messages and text exchanges between Samuels and Wright were also collected, including explicit threats made by him regarding her life. The timing of her final posts, made just minutes before the homicide, aligned with witness accounts of her fear and concern. This digital evidence provided contemporaneous documentation of the threats and helped to establish motive and premeditation. Neighbors reported hearing multiple gunshots on the evening of the incident and provided descriptions of a man fleeing the scene, consistent with Wright's appearance. Several neighbors also testified to witnessing prior arguments and incidents between Samuels and Wright. Friends and family members provided testimony regarding her repeated expressions of fear, her reports of stalking, and her efforts to secure legal protection. These testimonies corroborated the written complaints and digital evidence, building a consistent narrative of escalating threats that culminated in the shooting. The shooting generated an immediate reaction in the Willard Hay neighborhood. Residents expressed alarm at the scale of gunfire and the proximity of violence to a family home. Some residents reported feeling unsafe due to the frequency of similar incidents in the area. The visible crime scene, marked by police tape and investigators collecting evidence, drew local attention and discussion among neighbors about the nature of the crime. Local television and print outlets quickly reported on the case, with a focus on the domestic violence background. Reporters highlighted that Samuels had secured protection orders shortly before her death, raising questions about the effectiveness of such measures. Outlets also examined Wright's prior history of abuse and his legal restrictions regarding firearms. Coverage emphasized the pattern of escalation and the failure to prevent the fatal outcome despite documented warnings. In public statements to reporters, Samuel's family emphasized that she had pursued every available legal avenue to protect herself. They pointed to her police complaints, her documentation of abuse, and her decision to secure a protective order. Family members stated that she followed all recommended steps, yet the system failed to prevent her death. These statements reinforce a narrative that the victims sought protection, but remained vulnerable due to systemic shortcomings. The case sparked broader public discussion about the effectiveness of protective measures in domestic violence cases. Commentators, legal analysts, and community members raised concerns about how restraining orders and police interventions are enforced. Questions emerged about why Wright was not detained despite repeated threats and clear violations of the protection order. The discussion centered on whether legal instruments designed to safeguard victims actually provided meaningful protection in practice. Advocacy organizations focused on domestic violence quickly mobilized around the case. They used Samuels' death as an example of the risks faced by victims even after seeking formal help. Groups organized awareness campaigns, forums, and educational events emphasizing the need for stronger enforcement mechanisms and improved victim support systems. They called for changes in how law enforcement responds to repeated complaints and the need for better monitoring of high-risk offenders. The investigation and subsequent media coverage led to direct criticism of both law enforcement and the courts. Critics highlighted that Wright had a documented pattern of violence, was under a court order to stay away from Samuels, and was legally barred from owning firearms. Despite this, he was able to access a gun and commit the homicide. Community leaders and commentators pointed to gaps in enforcement, insufficient follow-up on reported threats, and systemic delays in addressing high-risk domestic violence cases. These criticisms underscore broader failures within institutions tasked with ensuring public safety. If this story gripped your heart and left you questioning the truth, don't forget to hit that like button and share with others who need to hear it. For more chilling true crime stories that dive deep into the mysteries behind these tragedies, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest updates, investigations, and thought-provoking discussions. Thank you for being part of this journey with us as we uncover the truth and seek justice. Together, we can make a difference. Stay safe, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next one.